In a cold prison room, under flickering fluorescent lights, a man in an orange jumpsuit sat silently, his hands shaking, his eyes hollow, counting the final hours of his life. Tomorrow was his execution. But before he died, he asked for one final request, a request that shocked every officer who heard it. He didn't ask for food. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask for freedom. He asked to see his dog one last time, the only soul who had ever trusted him, his retired police dog, Shadow. The guards thought it was strange, even foolish. The officers expected an emotional reunion, but when the dog entered the room, everything changed. Instead of love, Shadow began barking desperately at his owner. The officers froze in confusion. No one understood what was about to unfold. Moments later, a truth exploded, one that shook the entire prison. Stay with us, because this story will leave you speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The prison woke before dawn, long before the sun even touched the razor-wired walls. A cold, heavy silence clung to the hallways, one that only appeared on execution days. Even the guards, men hardened by years of routine and violence, moved differently today. Their boots echoed against the concrete floor with a rhythm that sounded like a countdown. At the far end of the death row corridor sat a man whose story had once been celebrated across the nation. His name was Ethan Ward, former police officer, former K-9 handler, former hero, now nothing more than an inmate in an orange suit, waiting for the final knock on his cell door. But Ethan wasn't pacing. He wasn't crying. He wasn't begging for mercy. He was sitting calmly on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly as if he was praying without moving his lips. The guards, watching him from the other side of the bars, exchanged uneasy glances. "Never seen one this calm," one muttered. "Yeah," the other whispered back. "Makes it worse somehow." Ethan heard every word, but he didn't react. His mind was somewhere else, back to a time before the prison bars, before the handcuffs, before the trial that ruined his life. A time when he still wore a badge. A time when a German shepherd named Ranger was always by his side. His partner, his shadow, his only family. A soft buzz filled the hallway as the main steel door unlocked. Every guard straightened. The warden stepped inside with a clipboard in hand, his face unreadable. Two chaplains followed behind him, along with a prison psychologist. This was the standard protocol, the final confirmation, the final walk. "Ethan Ward," the warden announced, voice firm but not unkind. "You will be escorted to the chamber in approximately 2 hours. If you have any final requests beyond the one already." "Granted, now is the time." Ethan lifted his head slowly. His eyes, tired, hollow but strangely peaceful, met the warden's. "No," he answered. "Just the one." The warden nodded. He already knew the request. Everyone did. It had been the subject of whispers for a week. Ethan's last wish before execution was to see his retired police dog one final time. Many guards didn't understand it. Some thought it was sentimental nonsense. Others thought it was strange that a man condemned for violence would want to see the very animal he once trained to hunt criminals. But Ethan's request had been approved. Ranger had been tracked down, retired, and living with a different handler now. Arrangements had been made. The warden cleared his throat. "They're bringing him in shortly. You'll see him before the procedure begins." Ethan closed his eyes briefly, relief washing through him like a wave he'd been holding back for years. "Thank you," he whispered. As the officials turned to leave, the guards began prepping the hallway, removing obstacles, unlocking doors, positioning themselves for control. The weight of the moment grew heavier with each passing second. Outside the prison walls, a black SUV was already approaching, carrying the dog Ethan had once trusted with his life. Inside the cell, Ethan inhaled deeply. Today might be the day he died. but it was also the first time in years he felt alive. Before Ethan Ward became inmate, tearjerker 87-21, he was a name spoken with pride in every precinct across the city. For nearly 12 years, he and his canine partner Ranger had been an unbeatable team, tracking fugitives, locating missing children, uncovering drugs and weapons others missed. Their bond was legendary. Officers admired it. Criminals feared it. But all of that ended in a single night. A night the world believed Ethan had snapped. The official story spread like wildfire. Ethan Ward murdered a fellow officer during a routine raid. Shot him, at close range. No witnesses, no warning. And when backup arrived, Ethan was kneeling beside the fallen officer, blood on his hands, his weapon still warm. The media tore him apart. Headlines labeled him everything from a fallen hero to a cold-blooded traitor. Protesters filled the streets demanding justice. His badge was stripped from him before he even had a chance to speak. But the part that disturbed people the most, the detail that made his guilt seem undeniable, was Ranger. The dog had been found standing over the body, barking frantically at Ethan as officers pulled him away. To everyone watching, it looked like the loyal K9 was accusing his own handler. The prosecution used that image relentlessly. If the dog didn't trust him, they argued, why should any of us? Ethan, however, maintained his innocence. From the moment of his arrest to the moment of his conviction, he repeated the same words. I didn't kill him. Someone else was there. Ranger saw it. But no one believed him. There were no security cameras inside the abandoned warehouse where the raid took place. No additional footprints. No fingerprints except Ethan's and the victim's. The ballistics matched Ethan's gun. Ranger couldn't testify. The case felt ironclad. Even Ranger was taken away and reassigned, forced into retirement shortly after. The truth was buried under layers of politics and pressure. The department needed someone to blame, someone to satisfy the public. Ethan became that someone. The trial lasted only a week. The jury delivered the verdict in less than 3 hours. Guilty. Life sentence. Until the victim's family demanded the death penalty, claiming Ethan's betrayal deserved the harshest punishment the law allowed. Ethan accepted it quietly. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. Not because he was guilty, but because he had lost the only thing he truly cared about, his partner. And now, years later, on eve of his execution, the same dog, the one who barked at him that night, was on his way to the prison. The past was finally coming back, and Ethan knew this time. The truth wouldn't stay buried. Long before Ethan Ward became a condemned man, he was known as one of the bravest K9 handlers in the department. Fearless, disciplined, respected. But even among all the commendations pinned to his chest, his greatest pride was never the medals. It was Ranger. Ranger wasn't just any German shepherd. He was lean, lightning fast, sharp-eyed, and fiercely loyal. When Ethan first met him, a trembling young pup pulled from an abusive backyard breeder, no one believed the dog would ever be police material. He was skittish, malnourished, afraid of sudden movements. But Ethan saw something no one else did. He saw a survivor. Every morning before sunrise, Ethan trained him. Patiently, consistently, never with a raised voice. He spoke softly, encouraged gently, rewarded every tiny step of progress. Day after day, Ranger's fear faded. His confidence grew. His instincts sharpened. And soon he was outperforming every other rookies in the K9 Academy. Their bond wasn't just professional. It was something deeper. Ranger followed Ethan everywhere, even when off duty. They ate together, ran together, healed together after injuries. When Ethan struggled with nightmares from a violent case, Ranger would push his head under Ethan's hand, grounding him. When Ranger developed a limp after a rooftop chase, Ethan slept on the floor beside him for 3 nights until the dog recovered. They were more than partners. They were family, and Ranger proved that in the most unforgettable way the night he saved Ethan's life. It was during a warehouse drug bust, years before the tragic incident that ended Ethan's career. Ethan had entered the back corridors, unaware that a hidden assailant was waiting above the rafters. Without warning, a gunshot exploded in the darkness. Ethan dropped to the ground, the bullet narrowly missing him. Before he could react, the attacker leapt down, knife in hand, ready to finish the job. Ranger reached him first. The German Shepherd launched from the shadows with a roar that echoed through the warehouse. His teeth clamped onto the attacker's arm, knocking him off his feet. Ethan scrambled to regain control, but Ranger held firm, refusing to let the man strike again. Backup arrived moments later, but everyone knew the truth. If Ranger hadn't acted, Ethan wouldn't have survived. That night, Ethan sat on the floor, cradling Ranger's head in his hands, whispering softly, "You saved me, boy. I owe you everything." And he meant it. The city honored Ethan for bravery. The department gave Ranger a special commendation. But to Ethan, those awards meant nothing compared to the bond they shared, which was why the night Ranger barked at him in the warehouse, the night of the alleged murder, had destroyed him more than the arrest, more than the accusations, more than the sentence that followed. Ranger had never once turned on him, never once shown fear of him, never once questioned him. Until that one night. A night Ethan still couldn't fully remember, but Ranger clearly hadn't forgotten. And now, years later, that same dog was walking back into Ethan's life. This time on the day of his execution. The moment Ethan's death sentence was finalized, the prison chaplain approached him with a clipboard and a somber expression. "Before we proceed with the final process, you're allowed one personal request, Ethan. Food, a letter, a meeting, anything within the law." For the first time in months, Ethan lifted his head. There were no long speeches, no hesitation, no dramatic pause. "I want to see Ranger," he said quietly. The chaplain blinked. "Your retired K-9 partner?" Ethan nodded. "Just 10 minutes, that's all." Word spread fast. Some guards muttered that it was pointless. Others scoffed, calling it pathetic sentimentality. One even joked that the dog might finish the job before the injection did. But beneath the cold humor was something else. Curiosity. Why would a man moments from death choose a dog over family, over food, over anything else? The warden held a closed-door meeting with the prison board. Allowing a K-9 inside the execution wing wasn't common, and Ranger wasn't a working dog anymore. But Ranger wasn't ordinary. His service record was legendary, and so was his connection to Ethan. After an hour of deliberation, the warden returned to Ethan's cell. "Your request is approved," he said, arms folded. "But under one condition." Ethan looked up. "The visit will happen in the execution chamber waiting room. You'll be restrained. The dog will be leashed and supervised. This is protocol." Ethan inhaled slowly. "I understand." Arrangements began immediately. Paperwork, calls, transportation clearance, Ranger's current. Handler, a young officer named Cole, was contacted. Ranger, now older, with more gray around his muzzle, was placed gently into a transport crate and loaded into a black SUV. Inside the prison, the air shifted. Guards rehearsed the movement plan, adjusting positions, setting up barriers, ensuring the path was clear. Execution days were always strict, but this one carried a strange tension, something heavier than procedure, deeper than duty. As guards escorted Ethan from his cell to the preparation room, one of them asked quietly, "Why the dog, Ward? Why him?" Ethan stopped walking. Chains clinked softly. "Because," he said, voice trembling despite his calm expression, "he's the only one who ever knew the real me." The guard didn't respond. He simply nodded and continued walking. For Ethan Ward, the countdown to death had begun. But so had the countdown to the truth, and Ranger, his loyal partner, his only friend, was on his way. The black SUV rolled through the prison gates with a deep mechanical growl, its tinted windows hiding the silent passenger inside. The guards watched from the tower, unsure what to expect. They had seen inmates receive visitors, but never a retired police dog being escorted like a dignitary. Inside the vehicle, Ranger sat quietly in his crate. Older now, grayer, battle-worn. His once bright eyes carried a lifetime of memories, some good, some haunting. Every bump of the road made his ears twitch. Every unfamiliar scent made him lift his nose, but there was one scent he remembered better than any other. Ethan. The vehicle stopped. The engine died. Officer Cole, Ranger's current handler, opened the back door and knelt beside the crate. "You ready, buddy?" he whispered. Ranger didn't bark. He didn't whine. He simply stared back with a slow, steady blink, the same look he used to give Ethan before a mission. Cole unlatched the crate, clipped on the leash, and gently guided him out. The guards froze as the old German shepherd stepped onto the pavement. Even in retirement, Ranger carried an aura that commanded respect. His posture low but powerful. His movements slow but deliberate. His presence enough to silence the yard. Cole held onto the leash tightly as they approached the main building. "Easy, boy. It's just a visit. Nothing scary." But Ranger wasn't scared. He was alert. Too alert. Inside the execution wing, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Guards who had been casually leaning on walls straightened. Some even whispered, "That's Ranger, the one from the Ward case." Ethan, waiting in the holding room, heard the whispers, heard the footsteps, heard the jangling of Ranger's collar. His heartbeat quickened, not with fear, but with something else. Hope. The door opened. Ranger entered. For a brief second, everything froze. Ethan stood in chains, breath caught in his throat. Ranger stood at the threshold, ears perked, eyes locked onto him. A moment passed. Heavy. Electric. Then something no one expected happened. Ranger didn't run to him. He didn't whine. He didn't show recognition. Instead, he growled. Deep. Low. Dangerous. The sound rattled the metal walls. Officer Cole jerked the leash. "Ranger, hey, easy." But the dog didn't budge. His gaze sharpened on Ethan like he was staring at a stranger. His body stiffened, his tail lowered. His lips pulled back just enough to show teeth. Gasps filled the room. One guard whispered, "Maybe the dog remembers what he did." Ethan's throat tightened. "Ranger." "Boy, it's me." Ranger took a threatening step forward. Cole tightened his grip. "Sir, stay still. He's reacting to something." Ethan didn't move. Couldn't move. His eyes remained locked on the only being he loved more than life itself. "Why are you growling?" Ethan whispered, voice cracking. Ranger continued to stare, not with hatred, but with confusion. And something else Ethan couldn't decipher. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And whatever the dog sensed wasn't the man standing in chains. It was something hidden beneath the surface, something none of them had discovered yet. Ranger's growl deepened, vibrating through the room like a warning siren no one fully understood. The retired K9 stood rigid, ears pinned back, teeth slightly bared, tail stiff as iron. Not lunging, not attacking, but signaling something unmistakable. Danger. Ethan remained frozen, his hands bound in front of him, chains rattling softly as his chest rose and fell. He had imagined this moment 1,000 times, Ranger running to him, pressing his head against Ethan's legs like the old days. But instead, he was being studied, analyzed, judged. "Easy, Ranger. Easy," Officer Cole whispered, tightening his grip on the leash. But Ranger didn't listen. He took another slow step toward Ethan. Ethan felt his throat tighten. "Boy." "What's wrong?" he whispered. "It's me." But Ranger wasn't reacting to Ethan's voice. He was reacting to something else, something beneath the surface. A guard muttered under his breath, "Dog probably still remembers the warehouse, remembers him killing that officer." Another guard elbowed him. "Shut up. Let the dog do his thing." Cole glanced nervously at the warden. "Sir, should we remove the dog?" "No," the warden said sharply. "Let's observe. This reaction might tell us something about the inmates." Before he could finish, Ranger suddenly shifted. Not backward, not forward, but sideways, circling Ethan slowly, sniffing the air around him with sharp, rapid breaths. His body lowered into a hunter's stance like he was tracking a scent pattern that others couldn't detect. Ethan held his breath. He knew that stance. He'd seen it on countless missions. It wasn't aggression. It wasn't fear. It was detective mode. Ranger had found a clue. Cole's eyes widened. "Wait, this isn't an attack posture." "What is it then?" a guard asked. "Investigation," Cole whispered. "He's searching for something." Ranger moved behind Ethan, sniffing near the back of his shirt, the base of his neck, then suddenly froze. His ears twitched. His nose pressed closer to Ethan's skin. His breathing deepened. Then, he barked once, sharp, immediate, urgent. Everyone jumped. "What the hell was that about?" a guard snapped. Cole swallowed hard. "That was an alert bark. Ranger thinks something is wrong with the inmate." Ethan's confusion grew. "Ranger! What did you find?" Ranger barked again, this time even louder. He sniffed the air around Ethan's left shoulder, then backed away and stared at Ethan with an expression no one could read. The psychologist in the corner stepped forward. "Dogs don't alert for no reason. Something about the inmate's scent, body, or condition is triggering him." Ethan frowned. "Condition? I'm healthy." The psychologist shook his head. "Maybe you think you are." Cole knelt beside Ranger. "Buddy, show me." Ranger nudged Cole's hand toward Ethan, his way of instructing his handler. Cole swallowed, stood up, and slowly approached Ethan. "Sir, I'm going to check something. Just stay still." Ethan nodded, heart pounding. Cole lifted the back of Ethan's prison shirt slightly, just enough to see beneath the collarbone, and what he saw made him step back in shock. "Warden, look at this." The warden approached, squinting. "What is that?" "A scar." Cole shook his head slowly, voice trembling. "No, sir, that's not a scar. That's a puncture wound. Old, but deep, and exactly where Ranger alerts when someone's been stabbed." Silence consumed the room. Ethan stared blankly, mind racing. He had no memory of being stabbed. But Ranger did, and the dog had just unlocked the first piece of truth buried for years. The moment Cole mentioned the puncture wound, Ethan felt the world tilt, not from fear, but from a memory he had spent years trying to reach. A memory that always flickered like a broken light, slipping away every time he tried to grasp it. Ranger's sudden bark jolted something loose inside him. A buried moment, a forgotten second, a truth he never fully remembered. Ethan closed his eyes, and the prison walls dissolved into darkness. The warehouse was cold that night. Not the kind of cold you feel on your skin. This one crept into the bones. Rain hammered the rooftop, leaking through rusted holes, dripping onto the floor in echoes that sounded like footsteps. Ethan remembered moving through the shadows, flashlight sweeping across crates stacked like maze walls. Ranger padded quietly beside him, nose twitching, every muscle tight. They were responding to a tip. Stolen weapons, possibly a gang meetup. Nothing too unusual, but the warehouse felt wrong. Off. Too quiet. Ranger stopped suddenly, blocking Ethan's path. His body stiffened, ears pointed forward. "What is it, boy?" Ethan whispered. Ranger didn't move. He breathed sharply, once, twice, and then growled low. Ethan raised his weapon. That's when everything exploded. A figure dropped from the rafters, hitting Ethan so hard the flashlight flew across the floor. Ranger lunged, teeth snapping, but another shadowy figure kicked him away, sending him crashing into a stack of metal pipes. Ethan tried to regain his stance, but pain shot through his left shoulder. A blade. Someone had stabbed him. He gasped and stumbled backward. The attacker grabbed Ethan's collar, pressing the blade deeper, whispering something Ethan couldn't understand. Muffled, distorted, like a voice underwater. Then a gunshot cracked. 1, 2, 3. Ethan fell to his knees, not from the bullet. He didn't feel a bullet, but from shock. Ranger scrambled toward him, barking frantically, trying to reach him through the chaos. Another shot. Someone screamed. A body collapsed beside him. Ethan remembered reaching out, trying to see who it was, but blood smeared across his vision. Everything blurred. Ranger barked again, louder, more desperate. Ethan felt the dog's breath on his face, felt paws nudging his chest, felt the world fading into white noise. He remembered whispering, "Stay with me." Then, sirens, flashlights, officers yelling, boots pounding the concrete, more voices, hands grabbing him. Ethan's vision dimmed, but he heard one sentence crystal clear. "Ethan shot him. He shot the officer." "No," Ethan tried to say. "No. Someone else. Someone was here." But his voice was nothing more than a strained whisper, drowned by shouting. Ranger barked angrily, lunging at the officers, trying to protect Ethan, trying to stop them from pulling them apart, but they dragged the dog away. A final memory flashed, a blurry figure standing in the far corner, watching silently as Ethan was handcuffed. The shadow slipped out the back door before anyone noticed. Then everything went black. Ethan snapped back to the present, breathing hard, sweat forming at his temples. The prison room came into focus. Ranger was still staring at him, not with aggression, but with recognition, with relief, as if the dog had been waiting for Ethan to remember. Ethan swallowed. "Someone else was there that night," he whispered. "Someone stabbed me. Ranger saw it." Cole exchanged a startled look with the warden. "But if that's true," Cole said softly, "then the officer who died wasn't shot by you." Ranger barked once, sharp, urgent, confirming it. And for the first time in years, Ethan felt something he had long buried under hopelessness and grief. The truth wasn't lost. It had been waiting in Ranger's memory all along. The room, moments ago filled with tension and confusion, now fell into a stunned silence. Ethan looked at Ranger, really looked at him, for the first time since the growl. And what he saw wasn't hatred, it wasn't fear, it was recognition. Ranger stepped forward slowly, lowering his head as he sniffed the air around Ethan's shoulder again. His breaths were sharp, deliberate. He nudged Ethan gently, right where the old puncture wound was hidden beneath the shirt. Cole swallowed. "He's signaling again." The warden frowned. "Meaning?" "He's saying Ethan didn't attack someone," Cole explained. "He's saying someone attacked him." The guards exchanged uneasy glances. The psychologist moved closer, studying Ranger's posture. "This is consistent with trauma recall. Dogs don't forget smells associated with fear or violence." Ranger circled Ethan once more, slower this time, as if piecing together the fragments of that night just as Ethan had. His tail wasn't tucked anymore. It stood low but steady. His ears twitched, not backward in aggression but forward in alertness. Then the retired K9 did something unexpected. He sat, right in front of Ethan. His eyes lifted up, locking with Ethan's, the same way he used to sit after successfully identifying a suspect. Cole covered his mouth. "Oh my God, he's signaling a match." "A match?" a guard echoed. "Ranger is telling us that Ethan's scent matches the victim's blood scent from the crime scene," Cole explained. "Not as an attacker, but as someone who was attacked. He's identifying Ethan as a victim, not the perpetrator. Ethan felt his knees weaken. You knew, didn't you? He whispered, voice trembling. You tried to tell them that night. Ranger nudged Ethan's chest with his nose, releasing a soft whine, a sound that carried years of confusion and pain, finally resurfacing. The psychologist stepped forward. Warden, this changes everything. But the warden wasn't convinced yet. A dog's memory is valuable, but it's not evidence. We still have physical proof, ballistics, reports. Cole straightened, gripping Ranger's leash. Sir, with respect, Ranger has never given a false signal. Not once in his entire service. He's identified murderers, kidnappers, gang leaders, people court said were innocent until Ranger proved otherwise. Ranger barked once, loud enough to echo off the concrete. The warden flinched. The dog's certainty was impossible to ignore. Ethan's heart pounded. Memories of the warehouse flickered again. Shadows, a blade, the whisper he couldn't understand, the body falling beside him. He was finally starting to see the truth. There was someone else in that warehouse, Ethan said firmly. Ranger and I both felt it. Ranger wasn't barking at me that night. He was trying to warn me. He was trying to protect me. Cole nodded. And tonight, he's doing the same. Ranger moved again, this time toward the far corner of the room. He barked sharply, teeth showing, ears pointed. Everyone snapped toward where he was looking. A guard stepped back nervously. Why's he barking at me? Cole's expression hardened. He's not barking at you. He knelt beside Ranger again. He's alerting to the scent you're carrying. The guard froze. What scent? The warden demanded. Cole exhaled slowly. A scent connected to the real attacker. The room erupted with whispers. Ranger wasn't done. He rose, pulled by instinct, and barked again, this time louder, angrier. Ethan's eyes widened. Ranger wasn't identifying a memory. He was identifying a living suspect. Ranger's growls tore through the room like a blade cutting through silence. Every officer stiffened. The guard he was staring at, Officer Hale, took an uneasy step back, his hand twitching toward his belt. Why's he looking at me like that? Hale snapped defensively, voice cracking. Cole didn't answer immediately. He moved carefully beside Ranger, watching the dog's body language. Ranger wasn't just reacting. He was tracking. His nose twitched rapidly, drawing in Hale's scent. Then Ranger dipped his head, sniffing the air near Ethan again as if comparing the two. Cole's eyes widened. He's cross-checking odors. Huh? The warden demanded. He's comparing Hale's scent to Ethan's injury, and the scent memory from the warehouse. Cole's voice dropped. Ranger thinks Hale was in that building that night. Hale barked out a laugh, too loud, too forced. That's insane. I wasn't even on shift. This dog is senile. He's old. He's confused. But his voice shook. Ranger growled deeper. Ethan watched closely. He had worked with Ranger long enough to understand him without words. And the dog's posture now wasn't confusion or aggression. It was accusation. Something darker twisted in Hale's expression. Fear. Real fear. Cole stepped closer, his tone calm but sharp. Hale. You smell like someone who's recently come into contact with gun oil, not regular range oil. Heavy-duty, unregistered type. Ranger's reacting to residue on your clothes. Hale's face drained of color. Gun oil isn't illegal, he said quickly. Could have come from any weapon. Maybe, Cole answered, unless that's not the only scent he recognizes. Ranger moved again, sniffing Ethan's shoulder scar, then immediately whipping back toward Hale, barking so aggressively it shook the metal door behind them. Ethan spoke softly. Ranger only reacts like this when he recognizes a matching scent from a specific trauma scene. Cole nodded. Exactly. He's saying Hale's scent is tied to Ethan's stabbing. Hale stepped backward until his shoulder slammed into the wall. This is ridiculous. You're trusting a dog over forensic evidence? The psychologist stepped in. Actually, K9 scent recall is extremely accurate, especially with retired service dogs. Trauma-based scent memory can last years. Hale opened his mouth to argue, but Ethan suddenly sucked in a breath. A strange sensation rippled through him, like a memory resurfacing from underwater. He lifted a trembling hand to his shoulder, fingertips pressing the spot Ranger kept alerting to, and then, like lightning, a flashback hit him. Not the whole night, just one image, a hand gripping his collar, a glint of a blade, a face leaning close, a hissed voice whispering, "Stay quiet, or the dog dies." Ethan staggered. The room spun. His chest tightened. "That voice," he whispered. "It was you." Hale froze. Ethan looked up, eyes locked on the trembling officer. "You stabbed me." Ranger barked, once, sharp, final. Hale's mask shattered. Sweat dripped from his forehead. His hand twitched near his belt. "Don't," Cole warned, stepping between Hale and the others. But Ranger leapt forward, yanking Cole's arm with surprising strength, placing himself in front of Ethan, teeth bared, ready to protect the man he once thought he lost. The room erupted. The truth was out, and Ranger had just exposed the first real link to the man who had framed Ethan. Officer Hale's breathing turned sharp and fast, like a trapped animal cornered with no escape. His hand hovered inches from the holster on his belt, not fully grabbing it, but close enough to send every guard's pulse spiking. Ranger growled louder, muscles coiled, ready to leap. "Hale," the warden warned, voice low and deadly. "Move your hand away from the weapon." Hale didn't blink. "You don't understand," he whispered, eyes darting around the room. "None of you understand." Cole stepped closer, tightening his grip on Ranger's leash. "Then explain it. Now." Silence. Hale's chest rose and fell rapidly. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His eyes flicked to Ethan, the man he helped condemn to death. And, for the first time, guilt cracked through his hardened expression. "Ethan wasn't supposed to be in that part of the warehouse," Hale muttered, voice shaking. "We were trying to scare the gang, not kill anyone." Ethan's eyebrows lifted. "We?" Hale swallowed hard. "Me. A few others. Cops from another task force. The raid you were sent on wasn't just a raid. It was an off-the-books operation. A dirty one." The room erupted in murmurs. Hale continued, staring at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. "The officer who died that night. He walked in at the wrong time. Saw things he shouldn't have. He threatened to report us." Ethan felt his blood run cold. "So, you killed him." Hale shook his head violently. "No, not me. I tried to stop it. I tried to stop them. But when you showed up, with Ranger, I panicked. They panicked. Someone shouted your name. It confused everything. And then—" His voice cracked. "And then I stabbed you to make it look like you had been in a fight with him. To make the story cleaner. To make it believable." Ethan stared numbly. "You stabbed me. And blamed me." Hale finally looked up. Tears filled his eyes. "We needed a scapegoat. Someone the department already trusted. Someone the public admired. If a decorated K9 handler fell, it would bury the story. And it did." Ranger barked furiously, pulling at the leash as if he remembered every second of that night. Cole's face twisted with disgust. "You ruined his life. You sent an innocent man to death row." Hale's voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't know they'd push for execution. I didn't know it would go this far." "You knew enough," the warden snapped. The guards rushed forward, grabbing Hale's arms before he could move, wrenching his hands behind his back. The sound of handcuffs clicked sharply through the room. Hale didn't resist. He simply looked at Ethan with hollow, broken eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Ethan didn't respond. He couldn't, because sorry didn't give him back his career. Sorry didn't give him back his life. Sorry didn't fix the years he lost. But it was the truth, and at last. The truth was finally rising from the ashes. Hale was hauled toward the hallway by two guards, wrists cuffed so tightly the metal dug into his skin. But even in chains, his eyes darted wildly, not at Ethan, not at the warden, but at Ranger. The German shepherd was locked onto him like a missile. Every muscle in Ranger's body was engaged, ears forward, stance lowered, tail rigid, growl simmering like a storm ready to break. Cole tried to calm him. "Ranger, easy. He's already in custody." But Ranger didn't relax. He pulled harder, growled deeper, because Hale wasn't the end of the truth. He was only the beginning. Ethan felt it too, a strange tension brewing in the room, like the air had shifted. Ranger wasn't acting like the case was solved. He was acting like the real threat hadn't even been touched yet. The warden noticed it. "Why's your dog staring at someone else now?" Cole turned in confusion as Ranger jerked his body sharply, not toward the door where Hale had been taken, but toward the line of guards standing along the wall. Ranger barked once. Everyone froze, the dog's gaze locked onto a tall, stern-faced officer, Lieutenant Marsh, the second in command of the entire prison. Marsh frowned deeply, stepping back. "What the hell is this?" Marsh snapped. "Control the dog." But Ranger only growled louder, baring his teeth. Cole's face paled. "Sir." Ranger only reacts like this when he identifies someone connected to a crime scene. Marsh's jaw tightened. "I wasn't anywhere near that warehouse." Ranger barked again, two quick, sharp alerts. Ethan's blood ran cold. Two alerts, not one. Not confusion, not coincidence. Two alerts meant direct involvement. The warden stepped forward slowly. "Lieutenant, is there something you want to tell us?" Marsh's eyes flickered, just for the fraction of a second. But it was enough. Enough for Ethan, enough for Cole, enough for Ranger. Ranger lunged suddenly, forcing Cole to hold him back with both hands. The dog snarled, teeth flashing, every instinct screaming danger. "Back him up!" Marsh shouted, but his voice cracked, just slightly. Ethan took a step forward despite his chains. Ranger never mistook a scent in his life. If he's alerting on you, you were there. Marsh's face darkened. "You're trusting a dog over my record?" Cole looked at him with cold disbelief. "Ranger doesn't alert to records. He alerts to truth." The psychologist spoke next, calm but firm. "Lieutenant Marsh's reaction is consistent with guilt. The defensive tone, the anger." Marsh's hand twitched toward his hip. Ethan's heart stopped. He saw the motion before anyone else. "No, don't," Ethan shouted. Cole spun just in time, pulling Ranger behind him as Marsh reached for his concealed weapon. But Ranger moved faster. The old German shepherd lunged with a roar that shook the entire room. He slammed into Marsh's wrist, knocking the gun loose. It clattered across the floor as guards tackled Marsh, pinning him hard against the wall. Marsh shouted angrily, "Get your hands off me! I didn't do anything!" But his mask had broken, and Ranger, panting hard, stared straight into Marsh's eyes with the certainty of a witness who had waited years to speak. Ethan whispered, voice shaking with truth finally surfacing. "It wasn't Hale who killed that officer." He looked at Marsh, trapped beneath the weight of his own lies. "It was you." Ranger let out one final bark, sharp as a verdict. The real enemy had finally been found. The execution chamber had never seen chaos like this. Officers pinned Lieutenant Marsh to the floor, his face grinding against the cold concrete as he spat curses and denial. Ranger stood only a few feet away, chest heaving, tail stiff, eyes locked, onto the disgraced lieutenant like a soldier guarding a war prisoner. The warden, normally composed even under pressure, looked rattled. "Everyone stop talking," he barked. "Nobody moves. Nobody leaves this room." The order echoed off the metal walls. Ethan stood silently in chains, watching the scene unfold with a mix of disbelief and numbness. For years, he had lived with the weight of a crime he didn't commit. For years, he'd been painted as a traitor. And now, in the very room where his life was supposed to end, the truth clawed its way into the light. A guard stepped forward, breath trembling. "Sir." Marsh tried to reach for a weapon. That alone is enough to detain him. "It's not just that," Cole said, eyes never leaving Ranger. "My dog just identified him with the same scent memory he used to expose Hale." The warden paced in front of Marsh. "Lieutenant, if you know anything about what happened that night, speak now." Marsh glared up, teeth clenched. "You're out of your mind if you think I'm going to confess because a dog barked at me." Ranger growled, low and dangerous. Cole crouched beside the dog. "He's not just barking, he's confirming. Ranger never forgets a trauma scent. Ever." The psychologist turned to the warden. "Sir, with 2 identifications, attempting to draw a weapon, and Hale's testimony, this is enough to pause the execution and open an emergency hearing." The warden's jaw tightened. He looked at Ethan, chained, exhausted, yet holding a spark of hope he didn't dare express. "Unlock him," the warden commanded. Gasps filled the room. 2 guards hesitated, but the warden shouted, "Now!" They hurried to remove Ethan's restraints. The metal clattered to the floor. Ethan flexed his hands slowly as if reminding himself they were his. The warden lifted the radio on his shoulder. "Contact the state governor. Immediate delay on the execution. We have new evidence." Another guard stepped forward. "Sir, they'll want documentation." "They're going to get documentation," the warden snapped. "Every testimony, every statement, every detail in this room. Start recording." A guard tapped his body cam. A soft beep confirmed it. Ethan swallowed hard. "Marsh didn't act alone," he said quietly. "Someone planned this. Someone ordered it." Marsh laughed bitterly from the floor. "You think you know everything, Ward? You don't know anything." But his voice trembled. The warden crouched beside Marsh, eyes cold. "Lieutenant, you're done hiding. You're under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction, and potentially murder." The words hit the room like thunder. Ranger stepped forward, placing himself between Marsh and Ethan, guarding him the way he always used to. For the first time since being sentenced to death, Ethan felt the prison walls shift, not closing in on him, but finally cracking open. The execution chamber had transformed into something else entirely. A courtroom, a battleground, a place where truth had finally taken its first breath. The execution chamber buzzed with frantic activity, radios crackling, officers exchanging confused whispers, the warden issuing rapid orders. But Ethan didn't hear any of it. His eyes were fixed on Marsh, because the way Marsh glared at him wasn't the glare of a man caught in a mistake. It was the glare of a man who had been hiding a secret for years. A guard forced Marsh into a chair, his wrists cuffed behind him. Ranger sat only a few feet away, eyes burning with an old memory that had finally found a target. The warden faced Marsh again. "You're going to tell us what happened in that warehouse. Not Hale's version. Your version." Marsh let out a dry laugh. "And why would I do that?" "Because," the psychologist said sharply, "the truth is coming out with or without your cooperation. Ranger has already identified you. Hale confessed. And you tried to pull a weapon. You're finished." Marsh's eyes flickered. Fear, then anger, then something more dangerous. Resignation. He exhaled slowly. "Fine," he muttered, "but Ward should hear it himself. He deserves that much, after everything we did to him." Ethan stepped closer, his fists clenched. Marsh looked up at him. "You were never supposed to walk into that warehouse, Ward. That was a restricted training site. Off the books. A unit I was running. That didn't exactly follow department rules." Ethan stiffened. "You were running illegal operations?" "Stings, threats, intimidation jobs." Marsh shrugged. A shortcut to make numbers look good. The department loved the results, so they never asked questions. Ethan felt sick. And the officer who died that night? Marsh's jaw tightened. He found out. He threatened to expose us. So you killed him, Ethan said, voice shaking. Marsh's eyes darted away. He pulled a gun first. I fired back. It was self-defense, at least at the start. Ethan's voice broke. And you framed me. You showed up early, Marsh snapped. You weren't supposed to be there. Hale panicked. I panicked. Ranger was barking. You were bleeding. It was chaos. Chaos you created, Cole said coldly. Marsh didn't deny it. He looked at Ethan again. Dragging your name through the mud was the only way to protect ourselves. You were the perfect scapegoat. Clean record. Hero reputation. The public would believe you snapped under pressure. Ethan swallowed hard. And you watched them destroy my life. Marsh nodded slowly. Better your life than ours. Ranger growled, deep and furious. Marsh winced under the sound. Ethan stared at him, tears burning in his eyes. I lost my badge, my future, my friends, everything. Marsh whispered, barely audible. We didn't think you'd get the death penalty. But you did nothing to stop it, the warden said. Marsh remained silent. Because there was no excuse, no justification, only guilt, only truth. And the truth was finally standing in the open, because Ranger had remembered what no one else wanted to see. The execution chamber, once meant to silence Ethan forever, now buzzed with frantic movement and raw disbelief. Marsh sat cuffed, eyes downcast, his breathing shallow. Hale had already been taken to holding, trembling under the weight of his confession. But the center of the room wasn't the criminals. It was Ethan. For the first time in years, he wasn't a prisoner awaiting death. He was a man on the edge of justice. A guard approached him with trembling hands. Sir, you're free to move. Ethan lifted his wrists slowly, staring at the absence of chains like he was touching freedom for the first time. But he didn't smile. He didn't cry. He didn't celebrate. He turned to the one who had brought him this far. Ranger. The old German shepherd sat proudly, tail still, chest risen, ears alert. His eyes were locked on Ethan, not with confusion this time, not with fear, but with the steady, unwavering loyalty of a soldier who had completed a mission no one believed he could. Ethan knelt down, his throat tightening. Ranger, he whispered. You never forgot, did you? The dog leaned forward, pressing his forehead against Ethan's chest, releasing a soft, tired whine that carried years of guilt, years of not understanding why his partner disappeared, years of separation, years of memories buried beneath trauma. Ethan wrapped his arms around him, burying his face in Ranger's fur. You saved me again, boy. You saved my life. Cole turned away for a moment, wiping his eyes discreetly before composing himself. The warden cleared his throat, stepping forward. Ethan Ward, he said formally, based on newly surfaced evidence, confessions, and the confirmation of a trained K-9 officer, your execution is suspended. Effective. Immediately, you are no longer classified as a condemned inmate. A gasp filled the room. The warden continued, his voice steady. Additionally, you will be escorted to a secure location while the Attorney General's office moves to overturn your conviction fully. Ethan nodded, but his eyes were still on Ranger. Sir, a young guard asked, do you want medical attention? Water? Anything? Ethan shook his head. I want one thing. Everyone waited. I want to stay with my dog. The warden exchanged a glance with Cole. You will. Ranger will remain with you throughout the investigation. He's key to the case now. Ranger barked once, as if confirming his readiness. Marsh scoffed from the corner. So that's it? A dog points his paw and suddenly Ward's a hero again? The warden snapped back. A dog didn't condemn him. A dog didn't alter evidence. You did, and now he's exposing you. Marsh looked away, defeated. Ethan stood slowly. Ranger, rising beside him like a shadow he'd been missing for years. The guards parted, forming a respectful path as Ethan walked forward with Ranger at his side. For the first time in forever, they weren't marching him toward death. They were marching him toward truth, toward justice, toward the life he had been robbed of. And though Ranger's steps were slower now, every inch of his posture screamed one thing. Where you go, I go. Because freedom wasn't won in a courtroom. It was bought by loyalty. Raw, unbreakable, unforgettable loyalty. The sun was rising when Ethan stepped out of the prison for the first time in years, not through the back gate reserved for bodies, but through the front entrance reserved for the living. The cold morning air hit his face, carrying the scent of freedom. And something else. Ranger. The old German shepherd walked beside him, leaning slightly into Ethan's leg like he was reassuring himself this wasn't a dream. His gait was slower. His joints stiff, but his spirit, unbroken, moved with the same determination he had shown on every mission. Ethan knelt beside him, rubbing behind his ears. "We made it, boy," he whispered. "You got me out." Ranger's tail tapped softly against the ground. It wasn't excitement. It was understanding. A black government car waited outside, the Attorney General's seal gleaming on the door. Agents stepped out respectfully, nodding at Ethan. "Mr. Ward," one said, "we're taking you to a secure facility. Your conviction will be officially overturned within days. You'll receive compensation, a public apology, and—" Ethan raised a hand gently. "All I want is a quiet place. For me and my dog." The agent paused. "You'll have that. But first, you need to make a statement." Ethan nodded. He knew this moment wasn't just for him. It was for the officer who died, for Ranger, for every ounce of truth buried beneath lies. A row of reporters stood behind a barricade, cameras flashing. They had gathered expecting a condemned killer's final transport. Instead, they witnessed rebirth. Ethan stepped up to the microphones, Ranger sitting faithfully at his side. The world fell silent. "My name is Ethan Ward," he began, voice steady. "For years, you were told I killed my partner. You were told I betrayed my badge. You were told I snapped." He looked down at Ranger, eyes softening. "But you were never told the truth. The truth was locked behind corruption, and the only witness who remembered wasn't human." Ranger nudged Ethan's hand, and Ethan smiled faintly through the pain. "This dog," Ethan continued, voice thickening, "is the reason I'm standing here alive. He remembered what I couldn't. He carried the truth when I couldn't. He saved me once on the job, and he saved me again today." One reporter called out, "What will you do now?" Ethan looked at the horizon, warm light stretching across the sky, like a promise. "I'm going home," he answered, "wherever that ends up being. As long as he's with me, it'll be home." Ranger barked once, loud and proud, as if announcing that the mission wasn't over but finally moving forward. As Ethan walked toward the waiting car, a nurse rushed out from the prison infirmary carrying a small envelope. "Mr. Ward, this was found with your old belongings." Ethan opened it slowly. Inside was a photograph, him and Ranger on their first day as partners. Young, determined, unbroken. On the back, in faded ink, was a message he had written years ago. "Where you go, I go." Ethan closed his eyes. It wasn't just a promise, it was a prophecy. And as he and Ranger stepped into the car together, leaving the prison behind, the world finally understood. His last wish before execution wasn't a farewell. It was the beginning of everything he'd been denied. A new life, a new chance, a story rewritten by the loyalty of a dog who never forgot. This story teaches us that truth can be delayed, but it can never be destroyed. No matter how dark life becomes or how deeply injustice buries someone, honesty, loyalty and courage always rise again. Ethan's innocence survived because one loyal friend refused to forget the truth. Ranger reminds us that integrity leaves traces through actions, memories, and the people, or animals, who stand by us. We learn that corruption may win temporarily, but justice prevails when even one brave voice refuses to stay silent. Loyalty is powerful, and the bond between a human and a dog can change destinies.